right, let's talk about one of the greatest, most mind-bending unsolved mysteries of the 20th century. It's got everything: a cool-headed criminal, a hijacked plane, a bag of cash, and then a leap into nothing. This, my friends, is the incredible story of D.B. Cooper.
I mean, really think about it. It's the one question that has just obsessed people for more than 50 years. How does a person literally step out of an airplane at 10,000 feet and just poof, vanish from the face of the earth without a trace? So to really get what happened, you got to understand the timeline. This whole thing goes down in just a matter of hours, the night before Thanksgiving back in 1971. It starts out as just another boring flight, then quietly becomes a hijacking, leads to a super tense negotiation on the ground, and then they take off again, flying right into a storm. He jumps into total darkness, and the plane finally lands in Reno, missing one very important passenger. Okay, let's put ourselves right in that cockpit at that critical moment. Just imagine, you're on Northwest Orient Flight 305. The plane is flying super low, super slow, and it's getting tossed around in a nasty storm over the pitch-black wilderness of Washington state. And then, at exactly 8:13 p.m., the pilots feel something. It's this weird jolt, an upward shudder coming from the back of the plane. Something just happened. On the control panel, a little light that says the rear stairs are open just goes dark. At that same instant, the pressure in the cabin changes, just enough to make your ears pop. The captain grabs the phone to call the cabin. Nothing. Total silence. He's gone. He just stepped off the back stairs into a 200-mile-an-hour wind and a freezing rainstorm. So how did we even get here? Well, we have to rewind to that afternoon at Portland International Airport. You have to remember, 1971 was a totally different world for flying. There was basically no security, no ID checks, no metal detectors. You could just walk up to the counter, pay with cash, and get right on the plane. And that's pretty much exactly what a man calling himself Dan Cooper did. I mean, this guy was the definition of average. Mid-40s, business suit, looked like every other guy on that flight. He ordered a bourbon and soda, lit up a cigarette, and just blended right in. And honestly, that was his superpower, being completely and utterly forgettable. The whole hijacking started not with a bang, but with a whisper. Cooper just quietly hands a note to the flight attendant, Florence Schaffner. She probably thought, oh great, another guy hitting on me, and just slipped it into her pocket. So he leans in, real calm, and says, "Miss, you'd better look at that note. I have a bomb." And then he opens his briefcase just for a second, and she sees this mess of wires and red sticks. Terrifying. His demands were so specific, so well planned. 200 grand in what he called negotiable American currency. I mean, who talks like that? It's such a weird formal phrase. And he wanted 4 civilian parachutes. Now that was a genius move. Why 4? Well, it made everyone think he might take a hostage with him, which meant they couldn't risk giving him dummy parachutes. Smart. And this is where the story gets even stranger. I mean, you've got this terrifying hijacking happening, but Cooper himself, he was polite. The flight attendant who sat next to him for hours, Tina Mucklow, said he was nice, even thoughtful. He ordered another drink, paid for it, and even tried to give her a tip. This wasn't some wild-eyed maniac. This was somebody totally different. And let's talk about that ransom money. $200,000 in $20 bills isn't just a number, it's a heavy object. We're talking about 10,000 separate bills, all bundled up, weighing a solid 21 pounds. That's a lot of extra weight to be carrying when you're about to jump out of a plane. Now, in the mad rush on the ground to get him what he wanted, someone made a huge mistake. The parachutes came from a local skydiving school, and one of the reserve chutes they sent over was actually just a dummy they used for training. It was literally sewn shut. For all his careful planning, Cooper either didn't notice this or didn't bother to check. That's a mistake that could have easily gotten him killed. Okay, so this is huge. The flight plan he demanded after they refueled in Seattle, to a normal person, it sounds totally crazy. But if you're a pilot or you know airplanes, it makes perfect, terrifying sense. Flying low, flying slow with the landing gear down and the wing flaps out. He was basically turning a 727 jetliner into the world's slowest, clunkiest platform for a parachute jump. This wasn't a guess. This guy knew exactly what this plane could and couldn't do. So he jumps. The hijacking is over. But the legend? Oh, the legend was just getting started.
The FBI launched one of the biggest, longest manhunts in its history. The codename for the case was Norjack.
And this right here is the big debate. Could a person actually survive that jump? For years, the FBI basically said no way. The conditions were just a death sentence. A freezing storm, a pitch-black night, and landing in some of the thickest, roughest wilderness you can imagine. But, other people point out that thousands of airmen bailed out in similar conditions during World War II with less training, and they survived.
So, what did they find on the plane? Almost nothing. 2 of the parachutes he'd left behind, a few cigarette butts, and his cheap, black, clip-on tie from JCPenney. It really seemed like a dead end. But that tie, that silly little clip-on tie, would turn out to be the single most important clue in the whole case. So fast forward a few decades, technology catches up, and a team of citizen scientists gets permission from the FBI to re-examine the tie. Using these incredibly powerful electron microscopes, they managed to lift and identify more than 100,000 tiny, microscopic particles stuck in the fabric. It was like they found a fingerprint of his entire life embedded in that tie. And here's what they found. Mixed in with all the normal dust and fibers, they found particles of pure titanium, not an alloy, but pure titanium, along with some other really rare earth elements. Now, back in 1971, you didn't just run into this stuff. This was high-tech material used almost exclusively in the aerospace industry, specifically in cutting-edge places like Boeing. All of a sudden, that detailed flight plan made a whole lot more sense. This guy wasn't just some random criminal, he was very likely an insider. For 9 solid years, the case was totally cold. Nothing. Then, in 1980, this 8-year-old kid, Brian Ingram, is on a family trip, just digging in the sand on a riverbank, and he finds 3 bundles of rotting $20 bills. They check the serial numbers. It was Cooper's money, $5,800. But instead of solving anything, it just made the mystery deeper. The spot where he found it was miles away from the flight path, and it looked like the money had gotten into the river long after the jump. So what are we left with? You have all this conflicting evidence. On one hand, you have the profile of a daredevil skydiver. On the other, a high-tech aerospace insider. And this has basically led to 2 very different ideas of who this guy could have been. So, in one corner, you've got the daredevil theory. This points to guys like Richard McCoy Jr., a Vietnam vet and expert skydiver who pulled off a nearly identical hijacking just a few months after Cooper. And in the other corner, you have the insider theory. This suggests it was someone like Vince Peterson, who was an engineer at a company that supplied Boeing and worked with the exact same rare metals they found on the tie. So which was he, the toughest-nails paratrooper or the brilliant, quiet engineer? The hunt for D.B. Cooper became the longest-running investigation in FBI history. Think about that. For 45 years, agents chased down every single lead, looked into thousands of suspects. Finally, in 2016, the FBI just said, look, we need to use our resources on other cases, and they officially suspended the active investigation. They closed the book on America's only unsolved skyjacking. But even though the man himself vanished, he did leave one very real thing behind. After the hijacking, the government ordered that all Boeing 727s had to be fitted with a special device that makes it physically impossible to open the back stairs while the plane is in the air. To this day, everyone in the aviation industry knows it by one name, the Cooper vein. So, in the end, who was he? A bitter veteran? A brilliant but broke engineer? Or just some lucky thief who jumped out of a plane and died in the woods? He never hurt anybody. He beat the system, and he got away with it. He turned himself from a common criminal into a true American folk hero. The only thing we know for sure is that he left us with a perfect and absolutely unforgettable mystery.